lessons learned. I was just wondering if you could explain that further.
Definitely. Look, there's no question, I think, that stress has an impact on your career. For me personally, I really, really put a lot of internal pressure, which was a good thing because it drove me to spend the hours on the court and to really not want to give an inch and take every little inch that you can to be a good player. But at a certain level, you need to be able to also relax a little bit and know that you've put the work in. Really, all that stress and unease a lot of it was put on for myself. And I think as you continue to want to advance, you learn that if I want to keep improving and if I want to keep winning at the next level, I also need to know how to shut my brain off and kind of get through the feeling of nerves, because in college, for example, it's gonna come down to you 3-0 and you have your whole team on your back. Sometimes in pros, you're gonna have to play matches for $2,000 on the line, and really, there's so much. It can really have a negative effect on you if you are too much in yourself. There's obviously positives, but I think the lessons kind of learned from that was that it wasn't a negative. It drove me to the court, but how much can you motivate yourself off of fear? You see what I mean? And so then if you can shift your perspective and kind of take a more positive approach and understand you've put in the right amount of work.
Great. Good question, Alex. Thank you.
Very good.
Let's see here. Alex Mikhailuk, go ahead.
Hello. So my question, it could be related to the article, but so what was the biggest realization or most obvious thing that you felt like you missed as a player that you saw when you started coaching full time?
Yeah, that's a good question, actually. I think one of the things that this is going to be an interesting one, but how you need to manage your how should I say this? You need to manage your development really carefully. I would put in, and actually, I remember Mike telling me when I was about 15, like, if you hit 200 serves a day, you're going to blow your arm out. Injuries was something that really I struggled with, and kind of you learn that in different periods of the year, you can't be going full throttle 24/7. You need to know when to taper off, when to go hard, when to not. And that was something that really I wish I would have done a little bit better, because it does take a toll on you to go 10 hours a day every day until you're 22, 23, let's say. And then you're not able to really take a breather, take clarity. And that's what, honestly, the coaching did for me is I took a year off of no playing, really off court, and I realized you can still get better. So just because, like, I used to think you got to do 10 hours on court, crazy things. But you could do, instead of 10 hours just on court, 5 hours on court, 1 hour fitness, 3 hours learning a game, 1 hour visualization, and you can kind of refresh yourself and regenerate. So by no means am I saying, in my opinion, that you should cut down your training, but you should learn to train in different ways. I think you should give more time in a balanced way. So still do your hours, but in a more balanced way is what I would say. Save you from injuries and keep you clear and fresh.
Very good. Thank you, Alex. That was a great question.
One thing, Mike. Raheel, that was your toned down schedule?
Well, no, that's just a random number out there. But yeah, I think you should be giving about, I think you should be working hard, a lot of hours, treat it like a job, 9 to 5, but in different areas. Some hours fitness, some hours, balance it out.
Yeah, gotcha.
Yeah, very good. Andrea Cabio.
Hi. So if you play an older player or a younger player, what are your mental, like, what are your mental things that you put in your mind? Like, how do I like play? Like, do you like change if you
Let
like?
me ask you, are you talking as a junior player?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Okay.
so I think Andrea might be, and correct me if I'm wrong, Andrea, but Andrea's question, I think what she's trying to ask you is when you were a junior, if you had to play maybe an older, stronger player,
Yeah.
what were you thinking mentally going into the match? Or maybe you're playing a young up-and-comer. I remember you played Felix Auger-Aliassime at the under-16 nationals. I was there with you. And, Felix was an up-and-comer. He was, the next big thing. And you had to play him in the first round, and you're one of the favorites to win the title.
Right.
So I think what Andrea is asking is what are some of the mental strategies that you had in these different situations? Is that what you're asking, Andrea?
Yeah.
Perfect.
That's a great question. That's a great question that I've thought a lot about as a junior too. Look, in college, I kind of figured this out. You have to prepare for the worst, but expect and believe in the best. And so when I'm playing a younger player, sometimes there's two situations that come to mind. So sometimes I'm playing the younger player where, I can get ahead of myself and say, it's going to be easy. That never really happened to me, but a lot of players did. I always took more of a little bit of a paranoid approach, thinking everybody's going to come playing lights out against me, and it really prepared me for the match. So I would say if you're going to play a younger player or an older player, you have to have a balance of that. So there's that part where you're prepared for them to play their best, okay? Because when you are playing younger players, you have to remember that they don't have the pressure you have to play them. So you're expected to win, right? And so you have to realize that they are going to come out playing really dangerous and free usually. So with that in mind, the first thing you have to do is be ready for that. You can't be shocked by how well they're playing. You have to expect them to play really well. And then, so that's the first part of that. I'm talking about a younger player right now. The second part of that is you need to really sit down with yourself and take time and realize, okay, well, now I've got the pressure as the older person. Am I going to let that negatively affect me or positively affect me? So the way to negative effect is to overthink and to tighten up. And now I have the pressure, so I'm going to play like this. But you need to take time before the match, sit with yourself and say, I'm going to only focus on myself, my game. The way to give myself the best chance to win is to play with confidence, high percentage, loose, and a clarity of mind. You try not to focus on the opponent in that sense. You look more at their game and ball. So you look at their weaknesses. You don't put a face or a kind of identity behind the player. And then as an older player, maybe you don't have as much of the pressure and you can play free. So that means that you have to really be careful not to get reckless. I remember when I was really young, sometimes against the older players, you start to go for shots because you think you need to play better than you actually have to. But you have to remember that they have pressure on their side. So test them. Spend the first set testing them. Can they handle the pressure of being the elder, of having the pressure? And I'll tell you, a lot of people are going to crumble in that situation. So remember that you have to test them, and then you have to believe in yourself that you can beat them. There's no reason why you shouldn't.
Great. Very good. Good question, Andrea.
Very good.
Ariana Arsenault.
Okay. So my question is, did anyone ever help you realize like everything that you wrote in your article, or was there like a moment where everything was like more clear like in your career?
Mm-hmm. On the character part, I realized it at Oklahoma from my head coach there. He had kind of told me, he gave me examples. He gave me Tom Brady, he gave me LeBron James, and he gave me Roger Federer. And one of the things, and then I kind of put the rest of the pieces together. But he had told me, like, why is it that if you look at these three guys, they've been able to be so successful for so long? And then you take Allen Iverson and Tiger Woods and who was my last one? I can't remember right now, but they were so talented as well, but they weren't able to sustain it per se, because they spent a good chunk of their adult career focusing on off-court issues that they had. So it just, and I see it all the time in college. Ever since that kind of went in my brain, I see it all the time with my players. And half the battle with the players was making sure that their off-court life is clear, and so that they can just go smooth and run in their tennis. I mean, when you're on the tennis court and you've got, I guess in your guys' example, homework backed up last minute, it takes a toll on you. So that's why you got to be on top of your off-court things. Get your homework done early. Stay away from off-court drama. Make sure that you're putting yourself in the best position to be as clear on the court as possible. And then in the honesty standpoint, I just realized in college, really, because I had that relationship with my second head coach, where he was telling me everything I did exactly to the T, whether it was good or it was bad. And I would tell him exactly what I thought about him and the team, the good or the bad, in a way that was to work towards positively helping each other. So it was never out of spite. It was always, and I just realized how much better you can get in that system, where you can take criticism well, and you can really be open about where you feel there can be improvements in a positive way, of course.
Very good. Very good. Good question, Ariana. Bianca.
When you were playing professional tennis, what was the best part about competing for you?
The best part about professional tennis was, it's really on you, right? I think you're put in a system in juniors and in college where, it's kind of the given pathway. But if you're going to play professional, if you're going to pursue this as your career, it's your decision. And that's a great feeling to know that after all my hard work and all my years, I still want to do this. And I'm doing it because I want to. Look, Bianca, I mean, if I don't want to practice today, nobody's on me to practice. And that's where you really see how committed you are to the sport. And I think that you should look at it in a way, even as a junior, that if nobody was going to tell me to go out and practice, would I? And you have to ask yourself that question, and then you can learn too if you're really committed or not.
Very good. Very good. Good question, Bianca. Very good. Christian.
What was the biggest difference between junior tennis and college tennis?
Great question.
That's look, junior tennis, you are protected in a lot of ways. You're very protected, and that's why it's so important to have a coach that's going to tell you the truth, and to learn how to take criticism. And I think juniors should really be preparing you for real life. That's why it's important to put yourself around good coaches and to not protect yourself. Because when college hits, for example, you have to look at it like, in some cases, they're paying you, if you're on a full ride, they're paying you $60,000 a year to win. I mean, it's the harsh reality of it. And if you can't perform, there's a lot of consequences that can go along with that. And so basically, one thing that really prepared me well for college tennis that I made that also obviously helped me in juniors, is I was so self-driven in juniors that it was okay for me. And I would, it's like what I just told Bianca, like if nobody was on me, I would still put in my 10 hours or whatnot. It was kind of the situation. Then I went and to college, and I was training in juniors in a way that put pressure on myself. Okay, so it really prepared me well. I think if you can train under pressure, for example, everything you do competitively, if you can do it with something on the line, it gets you really ready for college tennis, because the biggest thing is in college tennis, just there's so much pressure put on you that you have to learn to deal with, and you have to learn to deal with so many external situations, crowds calling you names, you're going home and away, so at away games you're dealing with a lot, and then you're obviously dealing with a lot of lineup pressure. Your teammates obviously want to play as high as they can sometimes, and so you have to protect your position, and it's so getting ready for pressure will be the transition, I think, to take to college.
Great. Thank you, Christian. Very good. Thank you for that. AG, do you have a question for Raheel?
Yeah, so my question is, have you ever had great result getting ahead?
Sorry, can you say that one more time?
I think his question was, has a great result ever maybe gotten to your head too much? Was that your question, AG?
Yes.
Definitely. In college, that's one thing you got to be really careful of is keeping your humility, keeping perspective again. Like I just think in college, like you all of a sudden you're in an environment where you're doing well and everybody's blowing you up, and you have to take a step back. It's kind of what they call, a great example is the sophomore slump. So this is kind of a thing where as a freshman, so your first year, you go into college and you do extremely well, and you're playing you're playing kind of unexpected, no pressure, no nothing. And let's say you have a great year. Well, now all of a sudden you have to back up that year. And if you've blown it up, what I think when you let good wins get to your head and you get too cocky, it puts a lot of extra pressure on yourself that then can really negatively affect your performance in the following matches. So one thing that I tried to do actually after college, when I kind of thought hard about it, is whenever I was going to get a compliment, at least this kind of worked for me, I would not really accept it. Not until I think the whole career is done. And even then, it kind of goes back to my article, right? You can't judge yourself by winning or losing. I think what you should do is be looking at your character. So look at these types of things and be proud of that instead. Am I like Nadal? I think if he had no Grand Slams to his name and wasn't a great tennis player, I think he's someone that you'd still admire, and he could still be proud of himself and look in the mirror and say, well, I never give up. I fight till the end. I'm humble. I play. I do the right things. I train hard, and I treat people well. And that's what kind of if you can do these things, I think then you're putting an emphasis on that, not letting your performance get to your head, and able to consistently play at a high level without putting extra pressure on. Sorry, I'll tell you, because in a sport like this or any sport, there's naturally you're going to feel a lot of pressure. I think a lot of people do, and so anything you can do to take pressure off, and then build your pressure tolerance at the same time, which is why I talk about training under pressure. So now you're building your pressure tolerance through training and preparation and exposing yourself to on the line situations, and then you take your pressure off by being humble and by doing these little things where you don't accept too much praise, undeserved praise or over exaggerated praise. Now you've got the highest pressure tolerance, and you put as little internal pressure as possible, and then I think that's really setting you up for success right there.
Very good. Thank you for that question, AG, and I hope you guys listened to that answer. Was very good. Very good, Raheel. Very good. Thank you. Anna, do you have a question for Raheel?
I do. So you mentioned in your article that fire inside me lets me look back and believe I've been able to reach a good amount of my potential. How are you able to find that fire inside you?
That's a great question. Goals, I guess, really. I mean, look, for me, I'm not going to lie, it came really naturally and it was innate. Pressure can also be a good thing. I think as soon as I remember playing tennis, I put a lot of internal pressure and that drove me, that put a fire in me. You almost obsess about your goals. And then there's the point where you're over obsessing. And so finding the balance is so important. But I think one way to also gain that innate fire is to be so clear on your goal. See, like I honestly wasn't so clear on my goals. I just knew the one thing I knew is I don't want to feel losing at all. I really hated it, but maybe that's not so natural for everyone. And so I think if you can write down your goal every day, remind yourself about it, but it can't be like, a fluffy goal. It's got to really be serious. You have to really mean it when you write this down. You have to know your reason. Why do you want to achieve this goal? What's it going to do for you, and what's it going to take? And once you've sat through all that, and you've spent a lot of time thinking this through, and now every day you wake up and you look at your goal, let's say, that builds a fire. I think that can really aid you in waking up every morning just with a fire and a purpose. Really, that's what it is, figuring out your purpose.
Raheel, do you have one example of a goal you had when you were a junior?
One goal that really stuck out with me was winning the Canadian Nationals. I think that was a thing that was on my mind for a long time. Since under 12s, I was getting really close, final to a couple times, and so that drove me. I remember one specific situation, under 14 Nationals. Pierre was actually there. I think that might have been the first real time he saw me. I was in the finals against Victor Khrushchev, and I was up a set, had back spasms, and the doctor cut the match. And I remember the next month being at home because, it only comes twice a year. So for me, it felt like the biggest thing in the world. And now looking back, you have a little bit of perspective on it. But I took the next month really depressed, to be honest. I remember I was like 13, 14. And I sat down and I said, I'm gonna win this thing. I'm gonna do what it takes to win this thing, and I'm gonna ramp it up a couple notches too. So and then when I came to Ace within that first month, we got it done. Actually, we all got it done, So yeah.
Great. And by the way, guys, Pierre's joined the chat, so welcome, Pierre. Thank you for joining.
Fantastic.
That was
I remember Raheel and his poor mother on the side when he had those cramps.
Yeah. Oh. Yeah, I was there for that match too. I remember that in Mont-Tremblant. Yeah, that was the final of the under 14s.
Raheel, yeah. I have a question.
Yeah.
You did win the Nationals after, correct?
Yeah.
And you were there with Mike Hall as your coach.
Yeah, that's right.
But he tries to tell me that it was the difference between that and you losing was now he was the coach there.
I think that might be it, actually. I mean, look, I can't pinpoint it, but I will say that all of you guys played it well. You guys were the main reason for but for me, someone that already put so much internal pressure, I think it just felt added on. And when I came here, I remember all of us sitting down and stressing the importance of long-term development. And nobody had ever said that to me before. I think all that I ever thought about is win now, and keep winning. And then for the first time I heard these words, long-term development, that took a huge toll off. I saw how calm, and then when we went to Nationals in itself, obviously I was with Mike, and he brought up the match against Felix earlier. That still rings with me. I lost the first set of that match, and I remember I remember Mike keeping me calm throughout that tournament, which was something that was really necessary to come through. And I remember in the finals on match point of that, it was so shocking, but I didn't even feel a butterfly. So yeah, it was crazy. It was crazy. I think everybody played a huge part. And really, if I hadn't come to ACE, it wouldn't have happened. Not that soon, at least.
Chris, you have your hand up, so I'll unmute you. Go ahead, Chris.
Okay. My question is, what was your biggest challenge as a coach and how did you overcome it?
Okay.
Very good, Chris. Thank you.
My biggest challenge was, and I prepared for this, is I think going into Oklahoma, for example, I was really young as a coach, and I thought, how am I going to gain the respect of these players? I mean, one of them was in the U.S. Open main draw, and he was actually older than me. And then, there were high-level players, Big 12 Player of the Year, playing Davis Cup, and it's like, okay, so how am I going to overcome this challenge? Well, it's the same approach to anything you do. You really have to know your stuff. So before I started, I made sure that everything I was saying to them was going to be factual, and I made sure I was so professional, which is something I think is so important as a player, to be professional, because the fact of the matter is, my little thing is, if you want to be a professional, you've got to be a professional. And so that means that you've got to really, really embody respect. And so as a player, what that looks like is showing up 30 minutes early to practice, doing your warm-up, recovering, getting enough sleep, being consistent and reliable day in and day out, working harder, being the hardest worker in the building. These are things that you can really gain respect as a player. And then as a coach, it's the same thing. Show up to practice 30 minutes early. Have your homework studied. Know your facts. Really, really be as professional as you can, constantly.
Great. Max has his hand up, so we'll jump right over to Max. Go ahead, Max.
Yeah, I was just wondering, what
Max,
was your mindset and what were you thinking whenever you won or lost a match?
Can you say that first part again?
What was your mindset and what were you thinking whenever you would win or lose a match?
Okay. As a junior, my mindset was don't walk off the court, don't leave the court until you've got a win. That was kind of my mindset. I was going to leave it all out there. I was kind of willing to go through as much pain and as much time necessary to win, and that kind of shaped my game as a junior, I think. But you have to, I think what you realize is you can't always win the same way as a junior, as a college player, and as a pro. And so the one thing that has to do is I think you have to learn to adapt to every situation. And so, look, my mindset as a junior, like I said, was in it every single point, that I was going to be so locked in, giving nothing. And that was one of my strengths, I think, that won me a lot of matches, is kind of the mental toughness attribute of pain tolerance and commitment to every single point. And then in college, like I said, where you have to learn to deal with so much pressure, I went a little bit 180 in a way that I remember I was kind of prepared for it. Like Victor, who had gone before, so what it was like, and I was prepared for how much pressure was going to be. So from the first day I stepped at Indiana, I tried to be and embody a person that really was willing to take on as much pressure as possible. So any situation like that, I was willing to put myself in. It was kind of a fresh start. And so my mindset became leave it all out there, play with no regrets in college. And that really helped me in the pressure situations. But one thing also on top of that is in training, you have to make it so much tougher than the matches so that the match doesn't scare you in any way. So the pressure you face in practice has to be 10 times as much as, or at least try to make it 10 times as much as you're going to have to deal with in a match. And then in pros, it's kind of the same. It's kind of having a more, kind of putting it all together, being more complete, because of how physical I think pros is and how much fitness is involved, you have to have that mentality of can I be focused every single tournament, every single point, and then also can I play loose and play to win in the key moments of the match.
Very good. Very good. Thank you for that, Max. We kind of got out of order. I think we're on Clara. Clara, do you have a question for Raheel?
Yes. What made you want to be a pro tennis player?
Great question.
Well, to be honest, I think I felt like I had to be a great tennis player.
I think the connection is cutting out. Just give him a second, guys. Let's just give him a minute, guys, see if he comes back.
Hey, Mike, while we're waiting,
yep.
I'm curious from so far some of the questions, great questions, by the way, from everybody. But does anybody have any comments regarding some of the questions Raheel has already answered in terms of things that maybe me, Mike, Pierre, Doug, Carrillo, Jay, any of the coaches at ACE have talked to you guys about? Like, is any of this stuff familiar to you? Have you heard it before from us? If so, could you give an example of a moment when maybe we did or Raheel touched on something that maybe you didn't think we were necessarily either telling the truth, or you didn't think that you weren't really buying into what we were saying, but now there's something you realize that there might have been some merit to what the coaches were telling you? Does anybody have any examples of this?
I do.
Go ahead.
One example is like when Raheel said like put pressure moments and work harder in practice, so it's like it's easier in matches. Is for example like when Mike feeds us like 10 at the baseline and like more, but like at first before we even run it, like we have to like either hit a cone down or do something before it. So like that's already like a pressure situation that he's putting us in, and like if we don't succeed at it, that's when like we have to run 10 at the baseline, which will help us in the match. So when we're under pressure, we realize like we have to like complete it, like do it the correct way, or else like it's gonna be like a punishment, like 10 at the baseline. But in that case, you lose. But yeah,
it's a good example. Anyone else?
You can either just unmute yourself or raise your hand. Here we go. I have one here. Nemanja, go ahead.
All right. So specifically speaking of like Victor, I know we go over this a lot during our matches and stuff. Going into the match, like Raheel mentioned that he wanted to leave the court knowing that he has no regrets of how he played or how he competed. And I know that me and Victor talk about a lot about this. And we kind of talk about if we go into the match, we're going to be professional. Again, Raheel mentioned about professionalism and how that's important in tennis. And there's a lot about how like the mindset of a tennis player should be in order to succeed at a high level.
Hey, I don't know if you can see me again. I think I just got back.
Yeah, sorry. We were just asking the players to kind of talk about some of the experiences they have in relation to some of the questions you were. Let me just unmute you. There we go.
Okay.
Yeah, it should be good now.
Yeah.
That's great. That's great. Thank you for that, Nemanja. Good stuff.
I have a question that I'd like to ask Raheel, because I think it's important that he discuss this and that the kids understand. Raheel was always a very, very committed player and committed to winning right now. And although we sold him on the idea of long term, one of the issues that he's had repeatedly is that when winning became so important, quite often he could not retain the way he was supposed to play. So what would happen, he might win that match, but what he reinforces is a behavior that in the long term was not the best for him. Does that make sense, Raheel, what I'm saying? And we talked about that, and can you address it?
Definitely. That's exactly right. I just think as a junior, especially, how much faster and how much more years of playing the proper way I could have had under my belt. And that's what it really comes down to. Winning at the best level is playing the right way. So you almost have to step away from the winning and look at the development and am I playing the right way or not? And that was kind of the lesson that had to be learned when I stepped into a level like in college, playing now professionals. But I always say, if I was a junior and I would have taken that approach on, let's say earlier, I would have had more years of that in my belt, and now I'd be probably farther along. Junior, you can grasp on to the fact that cheating the right way. So there are some mental attributes that are good with that you also need to take along, but am I playing the right way from a tactical standpoint, from a technical standpoint, from a tennis standpoint, and then am I competing the right way from a mental standpoint? Am I playing with courage? Am I playing with focus? Am I playing with heart? Am I playing with pain tolerance, with discipline? So it's just how long is it going to take players to catch on to understanding that, and that will determine the speed of your progress and how, I guess, far you can go also, I think.
Thank you.
Took me too long to catch on to that.
That's very good. Very good question from Pierre, guys, and very good answer from Raheel. And that's part of my level 4 research project is I have to interview all the Canadian players in the past 30 years that have played top 300 in the ATP or WTA. And my very last question to them is on a development pathway, what would they suggest? And quite often the answer I'm receiving from all these players is that in the developmental years up into the age of 16, to not prioritize so much the competition and to prioritize developing the right game style, the right weapons, the right mindset, playing the right style. That's what the majority of them have written about, and that they suggest that you make it very important in these years to, like Pierre said, have the right habits now, because later on it's going to be very, very, very challenging to develop. You're going to have to break your habits before you develop new habits. So that was a great question, Pierre.
Yeah.
Very good. I think we are on to, let's see here, Dara, AG, and then we did Ethan. Ethan Tiong, go ahead.
Okay, so my question is, how do you maintain your focus and concentration over a long period of time without breaking and the quality maintains the same?
Well, that's a good question. Look, in my opinion, it's done in preparation. It's done in training. I think, like I said earlier, if I know I'm going to have to play 5 hours in the heat, then I want preparing and to been prepared for even tougher situations so that you don't get shocked as much. Now, of course, a match is always different than a practice, which is why you have to intensify your practice, in my opinion, to be prepared for that. Like, I think that's where I think the long hours of training and preparation and being able to do that helped me be so focused for every single point. I think it's done in preparation, and then in the match to aid that, I think that you need to really slow down, take your time, and keep your clarity. It's what the routine in between the points is for. It's what gathering your mind on the changeovers, knowing how to handle in between the points can really help you in when it comes to.
Very good. Thank you, Ethan. We will go to Grace. Let's see here.
How were you able to get into the mentality where you could take feedback and honesty from coaches as a way to grow rather than getting defensive?
Very good.
That is a good question. I think again, it's something you need to get used to. I personally, I didn't really know another way. I think from the start, I was kind of used to that, but also I was really stubborn. But I like the challenge of tough coaches. I think it was a challenge to try to see can people break me or not. But then also, I wish I would have listened a little bit better. That's the thing is how do you mature quicker and learn how to handle feedback better sooner. I think you have to realize the intention of coaches. A coach might appear tough on you, but you have to really look at them as a person and their intentions. I think that goes for any player. If I'm going to work with a coach, and I know they have my best interest in mind, which, for example, here, I knew all these coaches had their best interest in mind. It becomes easy to take their criticism because every time they're on you or they're telling you something, you remember that, well, it's because they want to see me become the best player and person I can be. When you have that in your mind, it becomes easy, to be honest.
Very good and great answer. Very good. Jada, go ahead if you have a question for Raheel.
Yeah. When did you feel the most pressure, during junior, college, or pro?
It probably should have been in college, but I would say in juniors. Look, it was tough because in my mind I was probably 2 or 1 in Canada, and so in my mind, and I was young, so I didn't really know how to handle it that much. I thought that it took a little bit of a toll thinking again. It's all things that are self-induced. Thinking that you should win every single match you play because your ranking or your results are better than your opponent. And in juniors, there's even more of a difference in level typically. So you don't get exposed to losing that often. And so over time, you have to learn that again. And so that actually stunted it's kind of what Pierre asked me, that stunted my growth because I was too scared to lose. I, in a way, would play the wrong way if it meant winning. And then what happened in college is if I didn't play the right way, I wouldn't win. So, again, it's just well, if you can separate the results and judge yourself and make sure the people around you are supporting you in that, judging yourself on are you playing the right way, then you can really take pressure off and shift your focus away from that, and it will probably aid your development, help you becoming the best player you can with a great perspective quicker.
Yeah.
Very good. Thank you, Jada. Joey, what do you got for us, Joey?
When you were in a tough situation in a match, what would you what would you do to get out of that situation and make it yeah.
Okay. What would I do in a tough situation in a match?
Yeah.
Okay. I'd realize, well, look, throughout a match, there's different cycles. So from a psychological standpoint, if I'm down 1-5, let's say, love 40, and I'm facing match points, you have to realize that, again, it's perspective, realizing that it's now his time to close. A great saying that I was once taught was, when you're down, they've got the pressure, they typically tighten up, and when you're up, you typically tighten up. So I would say both are tough situations, closing and then your opponent trying to close. So when you realize that whatever the score is in this match, if I can fight extremely hard, I can always come back. And also on the other hand, when you're in that situation, you should realize that, okay, now I need to go for a little bit bigger targets, but still keep the pressure on and push through. And then I think another tough situation is, let's say 6-all in the third set for you guys, or when you go to college, let's say, the whole match comes down on the line to you. And one thing that really helped me, and thank God I did it right the first time, was I enjoyed the moment. I enjoyed that feeling of it's time to see who's got it. You have to put a little perspective on it, enjoy it, feel it, and play to win. Have that mentality, like I'm going to play to win, and really show what I got, but to win targets.
Very good. Good answer. Good answer. Very good, Raheel. Let's go to Josh.
Hi. My question is, were there any struggles going from Canada to US? And if so, how did you overcome them?
When you buy into the fact that if I can raise my level of toughness, I can really do anything. So there was nothing more. There was I guess the toughest transition for me when going from youth was learning that you're not a kid anymore. And people are not going to feel sorry for you. And if you spend time feeling sorry for yourself, you're putting yourself at a huge disadvantage and you're wasting your time.
Very good. Very good, and very good question too. Let's see here. Kurtan, go ahead.
In your career, when you got injured, how did you take it mentally and how did you bounce back?
Great question.
A good one. I didn't take it well because, back when I was thinking, well, every day it was stressing me out back then. But, it's funny. Every time I'm injured, I've come back playing clearer, smaller tennis. So I think when you are injured, it's so important to now spend the time learning the game. And this is kind of the situation where, okay, they've taken the nets down in public courts, so now you got to hit against the wall, and now maybe you can't. It's not as productive to spend time. I wasn't a kid that can do nothing. I was probably going to start learning the game, and so I think that's the way you need to approach injuries. Is you need to use it to really understand the game. By the time you guys all come back, you what are the highest percentage plays in this? How do I want to play this game? How do pros play this game? Watch a lot of match film. Seek out learning as much as possible during this time, during the injuries, and watch yourself come back a better player.
Very good. Very good. Christian Thomas.
In your article, you mentioned that reading has caused a lot of clarity and self-growth. Are there any books that you would recommend that can improve your character?
Character, yeah, for sure. The book that stood out the most to me was 12 Rules for Life. It has nothing to do with tennis, but it has to do with you as a person, which is your character. Your character has a lot to do with how you are as a tennis player. So that's why you need to develop that off the court so that it can translate on the court. One of the things that it talks about is there's one whole chapter on it about honesty, but there's another that will describe this specifically. You could get really good at one thing, or you could get averagely good at 5 different things. So pick your one thing wisely, or don't do anything special in one area. And I think that's so true in tennis. Sometimes we go out an hour when you don't have a coach there, and you do 5 minutes mini tennis, 5 minutes back, 5 minutes forehands, 5 minute backhands, 5 minutes volleys, 5 minutes 5 minutes return. But I didn't get great at anything in that hour. Sometimes you need to take that whole hour and just build a huge forehand, let's say. I don't know. But I think that's something that stood out to me in my tennis. You know, it's like, am I doing what everybody else is doing? Because like, you know, like as a tennis player, you see a lot of players do that routine of 5 minute volleys, 5. So now you've only in a week you've hit 25 minutes of volleys. That's it, let's say. So maybe you should really focus on what's the first area I want to improve in and go hard after that. And then pick another area and go hard after that. And then you become really good at specific things rather than, you know, good at a lot. I don't know, you know?
It's really good. It's really good question. And I hope you guys understood the answer. I mean, we've got like a little book thing going on in Slack, so we can add Raheel's book. I wrote it down, 12 Rules for Life. But what he alluded to there is really important because I've seen the death routine so often. And it happens mostly on the tour and at tournaments. You know, I go to tournaments, it's pro-level tournaments. And what do? They hit down the middle. They hit 5 minutes of cross courts. They hit 5 minutes of the other cross courts, 5 minutes of volleys, some smash, 5 minutes of serve return, play a tiebreaker. That's your practice. Okay, let's do it again in the afternoon. And they do it again. And they do it the next day. They do it the next day. They go play the tournament. What happens? They probably lose first round.
Right.
They got to do that again for the rest of the week. They go 5 minutes, 5 minutes, 5 minutes cross, 5 minutes volleys, 5 minutes smash, 5 minutes serve, 5 minutes return, play a tiebreaker. Next practice, they do it every practice. And it is just the death of you. If that's all you're going to do, it's forget it. You're not going to get very good doing this. So that was really good answer for me, Raheel. Thank you for that. Yeah, it's to work on specifics. I mean, we've talked about that in my level 4 course as well. You know, there's some players out there, they've got an unbelievable serve and an unbelievable forehand, and they do a lot of other things very poorly.
Yeah.
The players that made top 20, top 10.
John is.
Yeah, like Jack Sock made the year-end tournament. He had a big serve and a big forehand. He didn't do anything else very well, you know. So to work specifically on weapons, parts of your game that stand out, that make you great, that make you different, it's really good. Very good. Let's go to this unmutes. Lucas, go ahead.
My question is, what was an extra element to your mindset that allowed you to be such a successful junior player?
Junior player?
Yes, sir.
Well, I think the element was that mindset of you like how much I hated to lose helped me be a good junior player. But if all you want to do is be a good junior player, then that's kind of well, there you go, right? But yeah, I guess to be a junior player, I think it was just fear of losing. Really, like, you know, you can win like that in juniors. I'm not going to lie to you. You can win like that in juniors, but if you want to go anything farther than that, you almost have to have the good traits of that, which is like never giving up, focusing every point, pain tolerance, the drive of that kind of the fear brings you, which is to work harder than everyone else, prepare better than everyone else, the positives of that. But if you want to become a complete player and then do well in the pros, now you've got to take that side and then love to win, which is playing to win, courage, fearlessness, learning how to be high percentage and disciplined in pressure situations and all that. And then, and so like, I think what everyone needs to do, and I made the mistake more than anyone, is focusing on winning now and long term, and then kind of shifting your question a little bit that way to ask, what is it going to take me to become a great pro? Because if I can look towards that, you know, that's long term. Now we're thinking long term rather than just being a great junior. Because to be honest, nobody cares about my junior career anymore, except for juniors. So in college, like, you know, I had to learn the other side of that, and thank God I did. But there are a lot of players, like, I'll tell you, I'm thinking of two off my head. I won't name their names. You know, like, they were just really good at that, but they didn't learn to shift, and they can't win under pressure. They can't they can't win when it's you know what I mean.
Very good. Very good. Very good question, Lucas. Thank you.
Yeah.
Let's see here. If this works. I'm trying to unmute Martin. Of course, Martin could be our special guest too, guys.
Yeah.
But it won't let me unmute him.
Let's
Can I
go.
ask Mike, can I ask a question?
Yeah, everybody's entitled to one question. We let Pierre have two questions.
Yeah.
Let everybody
You want me to
have
help?
one.
I'm here. How's it going?
Hey,
Can
Martin.
I ask one, Mike?
Yeah, go ahead, Doug, and then we'll go to Martin afterwards.
Raheel.
Yeah.
You've alluded to, having how important you think a sense of humility and appreciation is. Having that, how do you think having that sense of appreciation and gratitude has benefited you? I know that one of the things that Mike has asked all the kids to watch, and I think they should have watched it, is a video on privilege. And so how do you think that having that sense of appreciation has helped you in your development?
Great question.
Here's how it's helped me the most. Not expecting anything from anyone other than yourself. I think there's too many players that rely on others or external resources to provide them any assistance. In fact, they expect it. I think if you're grateful for what you have, everything is a bonus. So really, the base is you, and everything that you're going to achieve is going to come from you. And once you can understand that, well, then you don't waste your time expecting anything from anyone else. And then now you're treating your coaches the right way. Now you're lifting every possible inch that comes from an external resource, and you're really, like, you know what I mean? Like, that's really what it is you shouldn't really expect anything else to be a main source of help for you. You know, like, it's a privilege every time you come to the tennis court and you have a coach there, because, like, to be honest, you shouldn't expect it at all. So if you do have a coach out there with you, you're pretty lucky, you know.
Yeah.
People, you go to, like, I'm sure you've played in Africa. You go there, these kids have nothing. And I'll tell you, there are a couple of really great tennis players that have come from nothing. So if they can do that, you have no reason to complain at all. These guys are out here trying to get really good with no shoes, with no tennis racket even. So I think that's kind of how it's helped me, is not expecting anything from anyone, so that when you do get it, it's an amazing feeling to have some help.
Great. Thank you.
Great question and really great answer. I hope everybody was listening to that. That was very good. Let's see if we can finally unmute Martin. There we go. I think.
Yeah, I'm here.
Like I was saying, everybody, Martin could be our special guest too. So thank you for joining us, Martin, and adding
no
to our chat. We're very lucky to have you. Thank you.
No problem. I mean, you know, it's nothing else to do, right? So might as well just come listen in.
Of course.
And a lot of the stuff Raheel's saying is, I mean, not even for players, just developing. Even full-grown professionals. All the stuff that Raheel's saying is extremely, extremely helpful. You know, very knowledgeable. It's a lot of good stuff.
Appreciate that.
Very good. Let's go down to, I don't think Mohammed asked a question.
Mike, can we go to Mohammed? And I have a question for him first. I want to know why in his background it looks like he's in San Francisco when he was on camera a few minutes ago. Ali, can you answer that question for us?
I don't know. I just did it.
Okay.
Yeah.
He had the gold. I don't know if anyone noticed, but he had the Golden Gate Bridge in the background there for a minute.
I saw it at the start of the chat.
Yeah.
You're not supposed to be traveling right now, Mom.
Yeah.
Yeah, I know.
Okay. All right. Go ahead. Ask your question.
So, in the article, it said that there was a spectator that was booing you. How did you feel at that time when that spectator was booing you?
That's a good question. You know what? I'll tell you. One thing college is really great for is if you're going to be a good away player, understanding how to use the crowd to your advantage. And I used to love just having something there. Actually, one of the hard parts, I think, for college players transitioning to pros is getting used to now starting out with no crowds again. So actually, when they were booing me, it was like, okay, there's some interest here. I can feed off of it. So booing or cheering feels great as a college player because you feel at home in that circumstance, and it's just an extra motivation. But then on the other hand, a huge part of becoming a great pro, I think, is learning to play with no crowd and with no external resource. So kind of going back to my last point there, you have to be able to be your best with no help. And in that situation, I liked it, but you have to also know how to handle playing in an empty court with nobody in sight. So no, how I feel in that situation, I liked it, to be honest. Booing or cheering is good.
Very good. Very good. Good question, Mohammed. I don't think, Nemanja, I don't think you asked him a question. Go ahead.
No, I haven't asked a question yet.
Okay,
So,
go ahead.
All right. My question is, being a university coach, what are some of the things that you look for in your players?
Okay, well.
Great question, and I hope all of you
No
are.
Serbian. That is a really, really good question. Okay, in college, there's a couple things I look for. Recruiting is such a big part of it. We had the number 5 recruiting class in the country at Oklahoma, and we were really careful with who we brought in because, you have to learn from mistakes. The first thing I'm looking for personally is character, because that's the biggest determinant of how far players can go, in my opinion. So I'm kind of looking at their values. Like if I could bring in a great player that's uncoachable, for example, and as in a off, let's say, I know that they've tapped out their potential. If I have a player that's really coachable and I know I can hold and I believe in myself as a coach, that's kind of who I want because I know the sky's the limit for them. But if they're not open to following the system or being coached by someone, by the staff, that's a huge thing I'm looking for. And obviously, I can't lie and say that skill and talent isn't a big part of it, but I'm looking at little things, I'm going on UTR and I'm seeing how many times they've retired, because are they going to push through tough situations where they don't feel like it or not? And I'm looking a lot at their personality and, their kind of their character and attributes like that.
Great. Really good. Some really good insight there.
I will say that with all the players that we've worked with, we developed this method kind of that seems to be very fitting. It's like what I call it, at least, is the no talent approach. And it's so funny because I don't know if you remember this, Mike, but 3-4 years ago we had a conversation about whether or not I was talented, and I had said, I have no talent, which is not true, to be honest. I was wrong in the past, but I had convinced myself that I had no talent because if you take on that mindset, now you're trying to become great in the controllables. If I rely on my talent at all, it could potentially take away from me wanting to control all the controllables. So kind of the approach is this: you have to prepare, act, compete as if you have no talent, at the same point, at the same time, you have to have that goal. I'm going to achieve that goal. I believe in myself. And that way, look, Naman, if you had no talent, but you felt you had to win, you make sure that you're focused every point. You're running down every single ball you can. You're not wasting your energy on time on useless stress and frustration. You're basically it's basically you're preparing properly the night before. You're eating properly. You're sleeping properly. You're taking every single inch. So the no talent approach is kind of the perfect way to maximize your controllables, if you know what I mean by that.
Yeah, it was a really good answer, I think. Yeah, control the controllables, and talent is not one of them. We don't even concentrate on it. Very good.
And then if you have it, it's just a huge bonus, right?
Martin raised his hand, so I'll try to unmute him here. There we go. Go ahead, Martin.
Yeah, I just had just like Raheel's talking more about the college aspect of it. And I'll just ask a question to Raheel so he can kind of explain it to everyone as well. Just how going the professional route and starting out at the lower, playing futures, 15,000, 25,000, just like the whole lifestyle of it. How people think it's all awesome. So it's just you're happy all the time. It's fun to do, but in reality, it's like Raheel knows. It's obviously not like that. So Raheel, if you want to kind of elaborate a bit more on the whole traveling aspect, how just like
sure,
how lonely it is, to be honest, right?
Yeah. Martin's been on the tour for how many years? So actually, he's probably got more exposure to that. But I mean, from my opinion, I would say that's a huge part of how good of a tennis player you're going to be. Can you handle that? And that's a type of mental toughness in itself. Being able to be alone for so long, pros see everything, but if nobody else cares and you're going to a foreign place where you can't eat and you can't eat the food without getting food poisoning or whatever. And I think that's a mental endurance that you have to prepare yourself for. I think it's a huge shock, but the best way to combat it, again, is to expect a lot of adversity and expect a lot of uncomfortability when you take it on, so that way you're prepared for how tough it's going to be. We're not even talking on the court right now. We're talking court. So it's a huge toll, and it's not fun, especially off the court, until you cut through and get to the higher levels and at the biggest stages. But if you do want to be a great tennis player and you truly mean it, it's kind of like knowing your reason. And the last part of knowing your reason, am I willing to do take or make to achieve your long-term goal?
Very good. Some very good insight. Very good. Thank you, Martin. I think we are down to Paul. Go ahead, Paul.
There's been similar questions, but my question is, what was sort of the biggest defeat you've had on court, and what did you learn from it?
Great.
It was one of my first matches back in injury, and it came down to me. I had match points, and I ended up losing that match and costing. And in that situation, I was the last match before the team had lost. So it was in the regular season, and we took a hit. And so that was really, really tough. And then, what happened was a week later, the draw for the Big Ten championships came out. And of course, we drew Minnesota again. And in college, if you're playing position one, you're going to play their position one. So I again had to play this guy, Felix Corwin, again, who now I think is like 400 ATP right now, I think. He's freshly on the tour, and so I see him actually play 8 times throughout our career. And I was devastating. It's like here's where I got away with it in college that I wouldn't have got away with in pros, because in pros, you've got to bounce back quicker. In college, if I lose on Sunday, I have a whole week to recover mentally. And it took me, and I was really devastated, but then it took me probably about 2-3 days. And then the draw came out. I saw him playing Felix again. And it was mission-like focus, like an absolute mission-like focus to get the match revenge. And it just shows that, another opportunity is always going to come. You could lose it in a tournament, and then you have another tournament the next week. And so you have to have that perspective that how quickly can I rebound, right? That's a huge thing. It's how quickly can I get up after taking a hit? And obviously it became a mission-like focus, and then I was able to win that match back in the same position when it mattered even more. So I think one huge trait that, at least for a junior and before you go into pros, that's going to help you big time in the pros is also training in a way to rebound from losses very quickly. And that's something I didn't do a good job of preparing for as a junior, because it definitely affected me too much when it happened.
Very good. Very good. And good question. Thank you, Paul. Sasha, we'll go over to you for your question, if I can unmute. There we go.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Sasha.
Great. Hi.
Hey.
Hold on. I have it written down. Okay. How did you deal with pressure moments in like college matches? Because I've had some like, hard ones, and
Yeah, and every time for me seemed to feel easier. But what I did really well the first time was I just remember having so much like embracing so well the first time I was in the position. I remember like having fun with the crowd in the moment, having fun with I was just having fun out there. Like, I was smiling on the court. Like, it's like he's got the match on the line. He's smiling. He's like playing he's playing the right way. And I think the first time you get in that situation, I'm not sure if you've been in a 3-all yet. I think, and I always tell my players this is prepare for it, visualize it. And I tell my recruits this, prepare to come in to your season and have to be the guy that's playing for the whole team. And the first time you approach that situation, make sure that you're playing the right way, you're playing courageous, you're focusing, again, not on the winning of it, but that you can walk off the court yourself and your teammates say, man, he played or she played with real courage and real guts out there. So that's it. Like, it's like you can't focus on the winning in that situation. You got to focus on what are people going to, like, how would you judge yourself if you walk off this court? Did you play with courage and guts and discipline, or were you a complete wreck that shied away from the moment? I think you have to take the moment by the horns and really go after it in a disciplined way.
Very good. Good question and good answer. Sierra, go ahead.
Okay, so in your article, you said that it's important to have an honest relationship with your coach, and you had some coaches who you didn't have an honest relationship with. So how did that affect you?
Great question.
It's tough because the reason why I think I was able to make that transition was because at that point I was playing one for my team, and so I knew that I was going to be like I didn't have that external pressure of like, am I on the fence, am I in the lineup or what? I know I'm playing one every time, and I know I have my job security and my scholarship security. And as a junior, you can trust that the coaches you're working with right now are always going to have your back and are have their best intentions. I mean, I could tell you that from knowing these coaches for how many years now. I could truly say they'll have your back. So that's the first big step to that you should take a little breather on and say, okay, yeah, they do have my best intentions for me. Once you recognize that, with that, you can take their criticism. And then I think, you have to trust your coach's credibility. They've been some great players. They've worked with some great players. They study the game hard. They're around it constantly. Like, you have to trust what they know. And when you do that, now you can have a real discussion about things and understand that, well, they're not just, when they tell you to get lower on your shots or that you're not working hard enough, it's not just their feelings. It's actually been years of studying this game. And when you think you're working hard and they say you're not working hard enough, you have to almost assume and trust that, like I said, they've been around so many great players that their standard is probably more accurate than yours, not to discredit yours. But and then you know, I remember we were on a road trip back from Michigan. We had just been upset by Michigan when I was coaching at Oklahoma, and I had a player, Alex Bakshi, who just played in the ATP Cup actually, and I had gotten on him for not putting enough effort in. And to be honest, I still think he didn't put enough effort in. And he had sat down and he had said these words, "I feel like I did put enough effort in." And I think if you go to your coach and you say, "I feel like I need this or I need that," that's a very mature way to say that, to not say that I'm right or I'm wrong. It's to say how you're feeling, and then your coach can kind of explain further along, and that's how you build a really strong trust and communication. But where it gets a little bit tricky is when players assume they're right and say, "No, I know this or I know that." No, I think as a player, if you don't have the experience of your coach, I mean, like almost every time the coach has the most experience through years and whatnot, all you can really say is, "I feel." Okay. And you have to trust the instinct of your coach. Otherwise, to be honest, if you can't do that, then you should probably leave the situation. But that's where a lot of players get mixed up, is they assume they're right when they haven't studied the game, even a percentage of their coach. And that's how you build that connection. And then, you know, the last point on that I'll say is, some of my best friends weren't in the lineup, and they didn't have that close relationship because nobody took the first step and was courageous enough to walk into the coach's office and really have a discussion, especially when the coaches you have are so willing to work with you and help you understand your development.
Very good. Very good. Last question here to Sophia. Sophia, go ahead.
My question is, looking back at your junior career, would you have changed anything?
Great question. Yes, definitely. Like I said, I would have tried to, like, you know, it's tough because I don't think I was mature enough to see it at the time, just being so young, but I would have definitely put myself on the line a little bit more with playing the right way. Like I said, more years under my belt of playing the right way would have definitely helped me in the long term, for sure, almost, because not only, like, you know, risks are good because you learn a lot from them. So I would have learned a lot if I would have lost a couple more matches playing the right way, let's just say, and maybe I'd win even more. So it was kind of a win-win. Either you win more or you lose more matches and you learn lessons quicker. So I would say I should have taken the risk to play the right way earlier, not focus so much on protecting wins. And worst case, I lose the match and I learn that's going to help me become a better player in the future. And best case, I win the match and, you know, it's another win. But more importantly, I developed the right way as a player sooner.
Great.
Mike, can I ask my question now?
Yes.
This builds off of what you just said, Raheel. You just said that what you may have changed as a junior would be playing the right way, and you said you weren't mature enough to see it at that time. And for myself and Mike, especially with our experience of leading this group every day, I know that we're all listening to this, and I think that the information you're giving is outstanding. And I know that everybody hears it and listens to it and understands it. But when they're on the court and they're in the moment, when we get back to training and there's one of those difficult moments that the coach has to be honest with them and, you know, talk to them about their character or about their work ethic or whatever it is that's going on. Is there any advice you would give to these guys that can help them in those moments when they have the emotions running through them at the same time that might allow them to step back, take some perspective, and remember these lessons that we're talking about right now? Because from my experience, it's like mental training. It's easy to talk about it and understand what you're talking about it, but in the moment, it's difficult to apply.
Definitely. Look, there's this book I read by Urban Meyer. He's a head coach. He was the head coach of Ohio State. He wrote a whole book around this thing. It's E plus R equals O. So event plus reaction equals outcome. And what he emphasizes there is that ability to pause. See, as soon as we feel ourselves get emotional, we have to train ourselves to pause. And I think a really great solution for coaches and players is to not only train tennis, but to train how to respond to coaching. So, like for example, let's say we take a week, and you warn the guys, and we're saying to the guys, and so the players are warned, we're going to be so hard on you, and whenever you get emotional or whatnot, and you don't feel like doing something, we're going to actually train how to accept feedback the right way. So we're going to pause. We're going to take a second and we're going to discuss it. And I'm going to say, this is the moment that I'm hoping for. Like this is the moment there's conflict between us. You don't want to listen, whatnot. This is the perfect opportunity to practice. Are we going to just be talkers, or are we just going to be doers? And, you know, the tough thing about this is what I've seen is that you could have an amazing coach teach this group of kids the same thing that amazing coach teaches that group of players, and this group, let's say, is more coachable and responds better, and they win a national championship, and this group isn't coachable enough and doesn't buy into the system, and they're 0-20 on the year. And so what's the difference? Well, really, it's how the kids respond. So I would say to the kids, if you want to see how far you can go, decide what group you want to be a part of. Do you want to waste a system and years of experience, or do you want to use it to your advantage and become the best player you can be? So it's really on the kids. It's really on the kids.
Mike, can I just add something on what Raheel said just to finish? Okay.
Absolutely. Yep.
For example, what Raheel's talking about, in his game, his forehand was not a great weapon, but it was more than adequate. When he played his game style, his forehand would be going, it'd be going more for it. And it would make the forehand look much better. So that's how it affected him playing way. And I'm sure that once he started going through things that scared him and he overcame them, then you get such confidence. Like in my case, when I used to play, there was a big change. When I was down 30-40 second serve, instead of creating fear, I knew there was a chance that I would miss. But I knew that if I did the right thing, most of the time I would do it. I started that when I was 18, and the rest of my career, it stayed that all the time. I never feared. I double faulted again, but I never feared. And when you do the right thing, it feels so good, even if you lose, because you know you did the right thing. So, you know, with Raheel, he's really learned, and I thank you, Raheel. As always, you know, I'm so proud of you. We're all so proud of you. And the way you talk and the way I hope that the kids understand, because you're a role model and somebody that I'm very proud that we've been associated with.
Appreciate you, and likewise, obviously. Yeah.
Raheel, what was the name of that book?
The book, it's by Urban Meyer. He wrote it. I think it's called, you'll as soon as you Google Urban Meyer, you'll find the name of the book. But he talks about this thing called E plus R equals O, and they actually got one of these like wristbands that he used to wear it during a game. So he would look and he'd remember to pause, because the decision he makes and his reaction is going to hugely affect the outcome. I'm not sure if you're able to find that, but yeah, Google.
Called Above the Line?
Yeah, Above the Line. That's right.
Okay.
Great.
Yeah.
Yeah, and just to kind of go off of what Pierre just said, guys. I mean, and it speaks about we've all read his article, and he talks about character. And I read you at the start all his accomplishments, what he did in juniors, what he did in college, what he did in the pros, what he's done as a coach. But really, the reason I invited him here today to talk to you guys is, he's got a wealth of knowledge and a wealth of experience. But like Pierre said, I mean, his character is A+. So, to have him here and for you guys to get the opportunity to listen to him today, I know for me it was really, really special. Thank you so much, Raheel. And thank you from everybody. It was really amazing. Thank you so much.
Thank you all. I mean, just one last thing I'll add is, obviously Ace is probably one of the biggest impacts on my career. So that's why I'm always willing to give back wherever I can here, because of how much y'all impacted me. So it's always a privilege for me too. So I appreciate you all. You guys had a huge impact on the lessons learned, and you know what I mean? Like when you're out there doing your private lessons and you're getting on those on the players, the players, I just challenge you to are you going to respond the right way, or are you going to get irritated by it? Because what he's preparing you for, and what all these coaches are really preparing you kids for, is to for what's coming.
Great. Thank you, Raheel. I know we had a bunch of work for you guys this past week in terms of watching the two videos that I sent out. I hope you guys got a chance to watch those, because for me, they're two really special videos. And then we had you watch the 4th and 5th set of the Nadal-Djokovic final and do the charting based on the Craig O'Shaughnessy article. We're not going to have time this week to discuss that but like I said, I think when we get these opportunities, it's the best. So we will discuss that stuff next week. And then I will post your work in Slack for what's required for you to do this week, but I can just go over it real briefly right now. There will be an updated fitness plan that Mike Donsky has sent me, so that will be posted in Slack. And as well, he'll do some videos of some of the exercises. Some of you might not be sure of how to do some of the exercises, so that will be posted. Keep sending me your volley challenges. If you have a wall somehow, even if it's in your house, maybe you get like off Amazon, the sponge balls, the Wilson sponge balls. They sell them on Amazon. I'll even accept your volley challenge with a sponge ball in the house. So I've got like our top 5 leaders so far. We've got the leaderboard. One thing to pay attention to, just small technical advice, is on your volley, the racket head needs to stay above your hand. I'm seeing too many volleys done like this. Of course, maybe you have 1, 2, but some of you are sending me a video of doing volleys like this every volley. I won't even count that, okay? I understand it's going to happen sometimes, but the racket head needs to be above your hand. If the ball gets down low, you bend your legs. Okay, I said don't move your feet. I didn't say don't bend your knees. So please make sure the racket head stays above your hand. It's just one technical tip for the volleys, but keep sending me your videos. Everybody that sent them, I do the time, and I'll add you to our leaderboard. Okay? I found the Bianca Serena match on YouTube, so that's going to be the match I want you to watch this week. And then I will give you each, maybe we'll do like alphabetical like we did 2 weeks ago, but I'll give you a topic to chart. I might not be so specific, okay? I might be a little bit more open to have you decide how to do it, but I'll give you each a topic to chart on that match. So I'd like you to all watch that match. That was a pretty inspirational match for Canadian tennis. The new fitness program we talked about. The last project is, instead of giving you articles to read or videos to watch this week, I'd like you to read a book find a way to read a book. So on Slack, we had a lot of people posting really good books. Raheel just gave a really good book now. He also gave a good book at the start of class, 12 Rules for Life. I'll post those on Slack, but find a way. I know you can't go to the library or you can't go to Chapters, but maybe you can get an audio book online. Maybe you can get there's ways to download books online. I'm sure you have books in your house. So find a way. I'd like everybody this week, you have 1 week. It's more than enough time with your schedules. Read a book this week, and I'd like a little summary from each person on the book they read, what they learned from the book they read. So next week, you'll have 1 minute or so to just go over which book you chose and what you got out of it. Okay? Last but not least, we have an opportunity to do an online tennis mobility workshop. Okay, it's going to be put on by Brian Weinberg. He's a former NCAA tennis player. He's a chiropractor. He works with a lot of tennis players, and it's going to be free of charge. So I think we really need to take this opportunity, but I need to know numbers. So I want you to private message me in Slack if you're interested. Okay, if you're interested, I'll send them the numbers and I'll try to find a time. It'll be done something similar like this on Zoom probably. And he will, I don't know exactly, but it's a tennis mobility workshop, like how to prevent injuries, how to increase range of motion. It's good. This is what Raheel was talking to us about. Like, this is the time now where we can work on different parts of our game. And so I think that would be a really worthwhile experience for all of us. I know that I'll be involved in that. So please send me a private message on Slack if you're interested to be a part, because I need to send him numbers and I'd like to send him the numbers by tomorrow. So that's it. If any of you are not sure, once again, I'll post all of that on Slack so you'll have it. Sorry we didn't get to go over the charting and the videos, but like I said, we'll do that next week, okay, as well as the work this week. And thank you again to Raheel. We'll try to do this maybe a little bit more often, where I try to get some special guests to come in and speak to you guys and you can all ask a question, because I think when we're all interactive, this is the way we all learn the best. So thank you all for joining. If there's anybody that has any immediate question, you can raise your hand, or else we will finish with that. Perfect. Well, I'll see you all next week at 3 o'clock. Make sure you send me a Slack message if you want to be involved in the mobility workshop, and I'll post everything else on Slack. Okay, thank you guys. See you next week. Thank you, Raheel.
Michael?
Yes?
Are you going to call me back, or what are you going to do? We're having a meeting, aren't we?
I'm just going to stay right on here, and I will send the number. Like, this is my private Zoom number, so I'll just send it by email to the rest of the staff right now.
Okay.
I think it's Kim, Carrillo. Who else do I need to send to?
Doug? Doug's there.
Doug is already here.
Yeah.
Just got to unmute him. Some of these people I need to kick out. Remove. Michael Zimmerman's already here. Who else do we need? Sorry, this person needs to be removed. Okay. Who else do we need on this chat, Pierre?
Hey, Mike, I'm going to head out, but I hope that was helpful for the kids, and I appreciate you inviting me on here to talk to